Photography is a super fun and creative outlet, but it also comes with a lot of struggles, from not knowing where to shoot this weekend to photos just not feeling right when you take them. And I've been through them all. So in today's video, I've got 4 tips for you to help you shoot and think smarter to hopefully execute better photos in the long run. Number 1 is for anybody that might be struggling with composition or finding the images just feel a little bit off when you take them. And this is a very simple way to simplify composition for a while to help you push forward and get a better understanding of what doesn't and does work when you take photographs. And to start off with, this might sound really silly, but bear with me because trust me, it works. Think about composition as if you're drawing a picture. If somebody was to give you a piece of paper and told you to draw a lovely picture, you would start with a certain part of that picture and then build outwards until you've got a complete piece. And although with photography we do start with everything in front of us already, you can still start small and then build up to that finished image. So next time you're out taking a photograph or trying to compose a photograph, just start with your subject and decide where you want to position your subject based on its surroundings. For example, on this image, I decided I wanted my subject, the building here, to be towards the upper third because its surroundings has all of these lobster pots lower down that would be nice to include in the photo. The sky is plain blue, not a major feature of the image, so there's no worry about the subject being up high and taking up a lot of that sky space. So the very start of my metaphorical drawing on a piece of paper would be this. So once I'm happy with my subject position, I can now start working outwards and make minor adjustments to the frame in order to make the entire thing come together. So looking at my subject up on the lower third there, I decide to make a micro adjustment and shift it down slightly in order to bring this line, the walls creating, into the middle of the frame so there's a nice clear cut going through the middle, while allowing more negative space above this pole on the left hand side. Next, I make sure I'm positioned so this lamppost isn't overlapping the building in any way. And then the last part of drawing my metaphorical picture is to make sure I'm happy with the amount of lobster pots in the foreground. And then lastly, I of course chose a shallow depth of field so the eye isn't lost here and we're guided by depth into our initial subject of the building, and our drawing is complete. One more example, my main subject in this image is of course this old barn based on its surroundings at the very time I took this photo. I really liked the big trees. I want to include all of them and not have them cutting off the frame in any way. So I decide at the start of my drawing that the barn will be down in the lower end of the frame to allow me to include all of those trees. Now all we have to do to complete the drawing is to decide how much of the wall we want on this right hand side, how much negative space we want above the tree line, and how much grass I'd like down below. Of course you won't and you don't need to do this with every single photo you come across, but if you are struggling with a particular scene or composition in general, then give this a go next time you're out and it will really simplify things and stop you from just rushing images. And you'll think that little bit harder about where you're placing elements in your images. Next up, I've got 2 things you can look out for and be conscious of when you're taking or creating photos to get more interesting and visually pleasing frames. There's a million different ways to create contrast in our images, of course most commonly known as the lightest and darkest portions of our photographs, or light and shadow. But my all-time favorite thing to look out for when I'm searching for locations to go to or when I'm just wandering around looking for subjects is environmental contrast. In other words, 2 subjects or 2 elements of a frame that don't normally get associated with each other, so they contrast against each other, also known as juxtaposition. So you could have a vehicle off-road in the middle of nature surrounded by greenery. You could have a broken window in an otherwise pristine modern building where everything around it is clinical and untouched. Or you could have something like a piece of furniture in the middle of the road. One of the reasons I love looking out for this and navigate towards it is because we don't always expect to see these things in such contrasting environments. So I think it makes images really interesting, and you can almost bet that the viewer of that image is going to ask a lot of questions or also be quite surprised by it. You've got more obvious and extreme scenes like trees growing out of buildings or shipping containers in the middle of nowhere, but you can also get more subtle and creative with it, like framing the beach and ocean through a stone structure with graffiti on it, or a rough texture next to a natural softer texture. I'm particularly fond of this one and may have to apologize for showing it in so many of my videos, but I love it because it doesn't 100% give away what this element of the frame is, but you know it's something with an urban appearance in one of the most natural environments we have on Earth, especially with the graffiti down there at the bottom. When you think of the coastline and the beach and the ocean, I don't think anyone ever thinks of graffiti. So if you're wanting your images to ask questions or have a bit of a weird and random feeling about them, then this is an absolute gem of a tactic to employ when you're out taking photographs. And the more you notice them, the more you're going to find random objects that you can use in order to create this contrast within your photos. Next, we've got looking for odds when you're out in the world taking photos, sometimes referred to as the rule of three, as you're more likely to find 3 elements or subjects together than 5 or 7, but at the end of the day, it's about having an odd amount of subjects or elements within the frame in order to create balance and visual harmony. And this is not just something photographers have plucked out of thin air, it's all about human perception. Of course it is personal preference, but it does span across many different artistic practices. Graphic design, interior design, print branding, even stuff like floral arrangement or table arrangements, they all employ this tactic in order to have a helping hand when it comes to creating something visually pleasing. My favorite example is probably when people stylize shelves or bookcases or tabletops and they place objects in sets of 3 in order to create a really nice showcase of stuff. But back to its use in photography, it often gives you a central anchor point in order for the subjects or objects to sit beside, creating balance, meaning the middle subject can sit perfectly on one of the intersections of your frame. Personally, I think this really comes into its own when you not only look for odds when you're out taking photos, but you can make the intentional decision when you are faced with a number of different subjects or elements lined up to make that choice to go in and only capture an odd number of them. So say in this image here, for example, say there was a 4th boat over here somewhere, I would be 99% likely to get in and cut that boat out in order to just have the odd number. All right, we're on to the last point for this video, and this one goes out to all the people that sit at home and have nowhere to go and shoot. As photographers, it's pretty natural for us to want to be exploring new places and shooting new environments on a regular basis. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate to me when I say life is not always that simple and we can't be somewhere new every single week. And a lot of us go through this back and forth when we're at home throughout the week thinking, I just want to take some new photos, I just want to go somewhere new, but I just can't, I don't have anywhere new, I can't travel, etc. Well, your new and different photos can still come from places you've been to many times, as long as you reinvent how you're shooting there. And look, this isn't the perfect solution. Sometimes we want something new, I get it, but it is better than staying at home and not going out anywhere at all and battling with yourself in the mirror because you said you were going to shoot today, but you couldn't find anywhere new, so you stayed inside and watched The Simpsons on telly. Try to be okay with going to a place you know well already and completely change your approach to that day out. If you go to the same place that you've been to many times and you go on autopilot and just take the same frames or instantly navigate to the same composition that you know that works, then yes, you probably are going to feel a little bit flat or a little bit uninspired unless something incredible like a snowstorm or something is going off that radicalizes that image for you. Radicalizes? Radically changes. That's the one. The change you make to make a familiar location brand new is completely up to you, and there's literally an endless amount of possibilities you can do. It could be the gear that you use and the lens you decide to take on the day. You could say, I'm going to take every single subject today on the lower third of the rule of thirds. You could say, I'm only going to take photos of people wearing sunglasses. It's endless, honestly, to make a place brand new again. My personal favorite is limiting my aspect ratio to something different because I find it makes me look at places with completely fresh eyes every time. I've walked around the city that I live in hundreds of times. I've took thousands of photos there, and I'd be lying if I said it didn't get a bit stale. But one of the most enjoyable mornings of photography I've had in recent years was photographing there, but I decided to shoot everything in 2.35:1, and all of a sudden the scenes I've seen a million times became completely brand new. The beauty about doing this without worrying about the results too much is that you're likely to really surprise yourself and get images that really are quite different. And not only are you recreating a place that may be really familiar with you, but you might just stumble across a certain type of photo that you've taken, a certain limitation that you've done on your camera, with your gear, with the way that you compose images, that actually sparks more and more ideas and then leads to something like a photography project, or perhaps it just makes you feel like a little kid again, which is what I love about it. It makes me feel like a teenager that's picked up my first camera and running around and everything's amazing. And there's no excuses to not come up with an idea to make something new again, because you can literally go onto any AI chatbot, language model, whatever you want to call it, in the world and ask it to give you a constraint, a rule to follow, a subject to focus on. It might tell you to only photograph one color, one piece of nature, anything. It's going to give you loads and loads of ideas. Find one that you like, give it a go in a place that you're familiar with. Your photos will be different and new, I promise you. You just have to think a little bit differently, look a little bit harder, and you're good to go. All right, that's going to be it from me in this one. I hope you found it helpful. Please check out all the links in my description if you would like to support my channel in any way, shape or form. I have presets available and some other bits and bobs, affiliate links, blah de blah de blah. Thank you for being here. I'll see you in the next video.